Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marina Martinzide. I'm the advisor at EducationUSA Pukihiu. Here with me today, I have Erica from Youngstown State University, and she will be talking to us a little bit about how test scores impact scholarship opportunities. Erica, thank you so much for being here with us today, and take it away. I'm very excited for this presentation because this is such a hot topic, I feel like, every application season.
Right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chance to speak with you all today and share about how test scores impact your scholarship opportunities. All right, let me make sure I have the right screen share. There we go. Okay, and I think we're ready to begin. So thank you all for joining us today. Scholarships and test scores, they're a very popular topic in admissions when international students are looking to apply and study in the United States. So we're going to cover some helpful information with you today. And here's the presentation outline. So first, I'll start with some general advice about applications, and then we'll spend some time understanding the testing landscape and also understanding scholarship opportunities. At the end of the presentation, I'll spend a few brief minutes sharing about the university that I work at, Youngstown State University, and then we'll have time for your questions as well. So feel free to think about your questions and share later, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with you today. All right, so let's get started with some general application advice. So my first piece of advice for you is to know the application deadlines and the scholarship deadlines. So whenever you're applying, when you're looking at universities, it's great to write down those deadlines. Know when you have to submit your application. I like to put reminders on my email calendars or my phone calendar. Any way that you can keep track of those deadlines will definitely help you. So be sure to know when those deadlines are, because there can be separate application deadlines for the application itself and the scholarship if there's a separate scholarship application. The next kind of question is, when should I apply? And does that matter? And the answer is yes. We always recommend that students look at the application deadline and gather all their documents and apply early, because sometimes scholarship money can run out and it will be awarded on a first come, first served basis. So if you apply early in that admission cycle, then you'll have a better chance at being able to be awarded a scholarship. And sometimes universities have cutoffs, so they can only admit a certain number of students. So we always recommend that you apply early so that you can be considered. So what should you do? We recommend that students apply to at least their top school that they're interested in, as well as at least a backup school, so that you have a few different options. Many students will apply to 3 or more universities. Now keep in mind, these applications will probably have an application fee. So the more schools you apply to, you may have more application fees to pay. So it's good to give yourself a few different options whenever you're looking at universities to apply to. So next, let's dive in and talk about the testing landscape. So if you're unfamiliar, in many university applications to schools in the United States, students will be required to submit test scores. And these are some certain tests that they will require you to take and submit your score. So we're going to talk about some of these tests, and hopefully you'll have a better understanding of testing requirements by the end of this presentation. And on the screen here, I have some pictures of common tests that could be required in university applications. So these are the ACT and SAT. There's the DET, which is the Duolingo English test. There is also the IELTS English test, the TOEFL English test, and the Pearson Test of English, the PTE. So these are just some of those tests that may be required of you, and we'll spend some more time talking about these in detail. So generally, there are two types of tests. So all of those tests I shared on the previous screen, you can kind of separate them into two different types. First, we have our achievement tests. So these are normally standardized achievement tests that really will look at your academic quality and your grades. And this helps to let the university know what kind of student you are and how well you could perform there. So achievement tests really focus on your grades and your academic knowledge. And these are the SAT or ACT. Now, not every university in the United States requires this, but often very prestigious universities or honors colleges within those universities will require you to submit this achievement test. Oh, sorry, I have a call coming in. And these are, they're available for you to take in your home country, which is great, but you may not have to take them. So it's important to just understand what the admission requirements are for the university that you're interested in applying to. So the next type of test is the English language proficiency test. So these are often required for international students if you are a citizen of a country where English is not the first language or the official language. So there are a few different English language tests out there that you can take. So there are several different options. You'll just need to see what English test your university will accept. So here are some of those common English language proficiency tests. There is the test of English as a foreign language, which is the TOEFL test. Sometimes this is referred to as the TOEFL IBT, which is the internet-based test. So that internet-based test is common now, what many universities are accepting. There's also the International English Language Testing System, which is the IELTS test that's very common and well known. And the Duolingo English test is a newer English test that's out there, but many universities are now accepting this test online. And there's also the Pearson Test of English that you could submit as well. So you can probably expect to see some of these tests that would be required by the university. So again, normally you do have an option for what test you'll need to submit. All right, so next, what test do I need to submit? What type? And the answer is, it really depends. So let's dive a little bit deeper and start to see what tests you may need to submit. So students from non-English speaking countries will probably need to demonstrate English proficiency. So if this is the case for you, you probably will need to submit one of these English language proficiency tests. And so the standard way to do this is submitting one of those English proficiency tests that we talked about on the previous slide. And in some cases, universities will allow the ACT or SAT test to be submitted instead of taking one of those English language proficiency tests. This is because the SAT or ACT is a rigorous test that is in English. So if you take that test, it will show that you do have a high level of understanding of English. So if you take that SAT test, it could count for your English proficiency. So it's something to see if that university will accept that. And there are a few exceptions for you that you may not need to submit this test. And one of those exceptions could be if you are a transfer student. So perhaps you are an undergraduate student already studying in the United States, and you're looking to transfer to a different university in the United States. Often if they can see that you're already studying at an English-speaking university, that you won't need to submit the English test. So that could be an exception for you. And if you're looking to study English in the United States specifically, like English as a second language, then you may not be required to take these tests at all. You could just apply to the program and study English as a second language at that university. And then that program, that English program that you're taking, could count as your requirement for studying undergraduate or graduate studies full-time in the United States. So those are just a few of the exceptions to taking an English test. But for you, you may need to submit this. So it's important to understand what tests you may be required to submit and to know what scores. So most universities will post on their website what their minimum score is. And that means that you have to meet that minimum score in order to be considered for admission. So let's talk about the testing landscape and what it may mean for you. So like I said earlier, it's important to check the requirements of the university you're interested in. So know exactly what they require, and then you can start to see how you personally fit into those requirements. If your university allows you to submit an ACT or SAT test instead of that English proficiency test, then you have a bit of a choice. You have some options. So you can start to think about, how comfortable are you with English? Can you understand and comprehend and solve complex problems in English? If yes, then probably preparing for the SAT or ACT may be a good option for you. If you feel that your English is advanced and you're able to do those, those complex problems and understanding in English, then maybe you should study for that SAT or ACT test. However, if you don't feel so comfortable with English or taking a standardized test in English, then maybe it's best if you prepare for one of the English tests instead versus the SAT. And so you could take the TOEFL, the IELTS test, the Duolingo test, any one of those English language proficiency tests that are required for your admission. So it really depends on your comfort level with English, and if you're willing to take both tests, and it depends on what that university requires. So we get this question a lot. A lot of students will ask, is there any advantage to taking both tests? If I submit an SAT score when it's not required, will that help me or give me an advantage? And the answer is not usually. So normally there's no special preference given if you submit both tests. It really just depends on what the university requires. So if the university does not require an SAT or ACT, that means you do not have to submit it. However, if they do require it, then that means you will have to submit it. So really, there's no advantage to taking both tests. It just depends on what the university requires. So now let's shift focus a little bit and talk about scholarships. So there are many scholarships and many opportunities for international students to receive financial funding while they're studying in the United States. So here I'm going to cover some of those different types of scholarships that you can find at universities in the US. So the first type of scholarships are academic scholarships. These are normally awarded based on your grades that you received, either in high school or during your undergraduate. So definitely the grades that you get count, and those can be looked at to determine what academic scholarship you may receive. There are also athletic scholarships. So if you are an athlete and you're looking to study in a sports program at a US college or university, you could receive athletic scholarships if you are accepted onto that team. There are also honors college programs. So within universities in the United States, sometimes they'll have an honors college program. And that means if you're a high achieving student with a high GPA, you can also apply to the honors college. And normally they have additional funding and scholarships for those students. So it's definitely something to research if you think that could apply to you. Now, for graduate students, there are some special, unique funding opportunities, and one of those are graduate assistantships. So an assistantship is normally for graduate students, and that means that you will be working for the department while you're studying, and you could be helping with research, with teaching, or other duties. And while you're doing that, you receive a scholarship to pay for your tuition, and you may even be awarded extra money to pay for your living expenses while you're studying there. So for graduate students, I encourage you to look at assistantships and also fellowships. Fellowships are special types of scholarships that you can be accepted into. They may have some different extra requirements, but they're great sources of funding as well. And fellowships are sometimes offered for undergraduate students as well. And there are also grants available. These are popular for students who, once they're accepted and they're studying at the university, they could apply for grants. And there's often research grants or special project grants available. So if you're working on research or special projects with classmates or clubs, you could apply for grants to get extra scholarships to help with your studies. There are also need-based scholarships. These are for students who demonstrate a financial need. And often for these scholarships, you're required to submit some financial documentation to show that you do have a financial need, that you need some assistance with paying for your education. So some universities do have need-based scholarships. And the list goes on. There really are many different types of scholarships, but you could also find some extra scholarships based on community service that you have done, or leadership scholarships as well. So this is just a brief overview of some of those different types of scholarships that you may find when you're applying to American universities. And scholarships are usually based on the following information. So they're normally based on your high school GPA. So for undergraduate students, your high school GPA is very important. So you'll submit your high school transcript, and that university will calculate your GPA on a 4.0 American scale. So based on that, you could be awarded scholarships. Also, some universities require the SAT or ACT. So they may look at those test scores and award the scholarship based on what you get on those tests. Also, some universities require a scholarship essay. So they would ask you to write an essay or paper on a certain topic, and then based on what you write and how your paper is, they would award a scholarship based on that. So those are normally the three main things that scholarships are awarded based on at universities in the United States. And often the SAT and ACT are not an admission requirement for international students. However, sometimes scholarships are tied to those tests, meaning that it's not a requirement, but if you want a scholarship, you may need to submit that test. So again, just know what the university is requiring. So of course, your high school grades are very important for scholarships, but some of those test scores and additional essays that you may have to write could be considered for your scholarship award. And I have just a few more things about scholarship and funding. So studying in the United States is a huge journey. I know that it can be daunting and it can be nerve-wracking looking for different universities, and sometimes the costs and tuition can be overwhelming. So first, I just recommend that you take time to research the tuition costs and research the scholarship opportunities. There are scholarships out there. You may just need to spend some time doing your research and looking for those opportunities. And some questions to ask are, does the university have a separate scholarship application? So for example, at my university, undergraduate scholarships do not require an additional application. However, for some schools, You may have to first apply to the university, and then second, submit a different scholarship application. So know if that's something you will need to do. Or you could ask, does the university award scholarships automatically? That means that there would be nothing for you to submit, that the university, the admissions team, when they're looking at your application, if they see your GPA requirements, they could award a scholarship automatically based on your grades, which means you wouldn't have to do anything extra. And it's important to know, what are the scholarship requirements? What are the deadlines? Because you want to make sure you have the best opportunity to be considered for those scholarships. So it's important to know what is required of you to obtain a scholarship and when is that scholarship application due. And it's important to know that some scholarship applications may require written essays. And if that's the case, I encourage you to talk to a teacher or have your friends proofread, a family member maybe proofread your application. Scholarship essays can be an important factor in the decision of you getting a scholarship. So it's great to take your time, talk to a teacher, professor, get some advice, get some tips, and have someone proofread your application, your scholarship application essay, so that you have a great chance at being awarded a scholarship. And a final reminder for graduate students, think about funding and do some research and look at those assistantship opportunities that may be available for you. So we'll spend a second here talking about graduate admission and testing, specifically if we have any graduate students out there. So graduate admission applications may require the English proficiency test scores as well. Often, however, they require a higher level of English than the undergraduate programs. So that's something that's important to know. The graduate programs often require that higher English score because you're doing a higher level of work in graduate studies. And many graduate programs in the United States require the GRE or GMAT test. That's a standardized test similar to the SAT, but it's at a different level for graduate students. And often this is required. And so if it's required, I encourage you, if you have questions about that, you could talk to your EducationUSA advisor for some more help and guidance and information on how to take those tests. However, it's important to know that some graduate programs are test optional. That means that you would not have to submit the GRE or GMAT test. So at our university, it varies by graduate department. Some departments require those tests and some do not. So even within our university, each program has a different requirement. So you may not need to submit that if the program is GRE test optional. And just a reminder, there are special funding opportunities for graduate students. So I really encourage you to research assistantships and fellowships. So finally, here are some questions to ask as you're doing research and as you're looking to apply, thinking about the test scores and what scholarships are out there. So the first question to ask and understand is, what are the minimum admission requirements? Are you required to have a certain GPA? Are you required to submit test scores? If yes, what are those test score requirements? Know and understand exactly what is required of you. The next step is, how are scholarships awarded? Know how the university is going to award a scholarship. Will they do it solely based on GPA, based only on your transcripts? Will they also look at an essay and require you to write an essay in English? Or will they also require tests such as the SAT or GRE? So just understand how the scholarship is awarded so that you can prepare for that scholarship application. So the third question to ask is, how does my academic profile fit with number 1 and number 2? So if you are an advanced English speaker, Let's say you have over a 7.5 on IELTS or over 102 on TOEFL. We recommend that you prepare for that SAT or ACT test if you have higher levels of English. However, maybe if you're not so comfortable, and that's totally fine, maybe you prepare instead for those English language proficiency tests. And finally, before I share about Youngstown State University, here are a few pointers that I wanted to share with you as you're looking to apply to American universities. So one important question to ask is, are there conditions to the scholarship? This means if you're awarded a scholarship, are there any conditions or requirements that you have to maintain to keep that scholarship? Many universities will say that you have to maintain a certain GPA and get good grades in order to keep getting that scholarship every year. Next, is the scholarship a one-time scholarship or is it renewable? So if a scholarship is a one-time scholarship, that means you will only get it once, probably in the first semester when you're studying. If a scholarship is renewable, that means that you can get it every year that you're studying in your degree program. So it's important to understand how often you will be getting the scholarship to know how much total money you will be able to get while you're studying. The next question is, when will the scholarship be applied to your student account and your tuition bill? So this is important because some universities award scholarships only at certain times of the year or at certain terms. For example, our university, YSU, only awards scholarships starting in the fall semester. So that means if you study in the fall semester, your money will be there and you'll get it every year. However, if you start in the spring semester, that first semester, your scholarship won't be there, but it will go on your account in the next semester in fall, then it will be there every year you're studying. So some universities will apply the scholarship at different times depending on when you start. So it's important to know that so you know and can expect what you'll have to pay when you arrive. Another question is, are there any requirements after I receive a scholarship? So for example, in some scholarships that I received when I was an undergraduate student, I was required to write a thank you note or a thank you letter to the scholarship donor. Sometimes that is required. Also, sometimes you are required to submit official documents or test scores. So if the university requires the SAT, they may require you to submit or mail your official test score. And the last question I have for you is to ask, if you change your major or program, will you still get that scholarship? So in the United States, there is a lot of flexibility. If you decide that you want to change your major, normally you can do that easily. However, sometimes scholarships are tied to specific programs. So let's say you start out as an engineering major and you're awarded a special engineering scholarship. And one of the conditions may be that if you change your major, you will no longer receive that scholarship. So generally, university awarded scholarships will be for any major, but sometimes there are specific scholarships for specific majors or departments. So if you leave that major, then you wouldn't get that scholarship. So it's just something to consider, and it's a great question to ask before you submit your application. Alrighty, so that finishes up the information about how test scores can impact scholarship opportunities. And now I'm going to spend just 5 minutes or so sharing specifically about Youngstown State University. And then we'll move on to your questions in just a few minutes. So Youngstown State University was founded in the year 1908. So we have over 100 years of experience in educating students in the United States and around the world. And we are located in the state of Ohio in the United States. So we are in the Midwest region of the US. And we are a public university that's ranked in the top 119 universities in the Midwest region. And we're proud to have wonderful engineering programs that are ranked in the top 25% best engineering programs in the country. We also have top accredited business programs as well, if that's something you're interested in studying. And our university is a mid-sized university with around 11,000 total students. And currently around 400 of those students are international students from around the world. And we have wonderful smaller classroom sizes. So normally our student to faculty ratio is 17 students to 1 professor. So that means you can expect smaller class sizes where you have more time to engage with the professor and get to know them personally. We have over 100 undergraduate majors for you to choose from in several different colleges, as well as 24 graduate programs. So anything you're interested in, I'm sure we can find it at YSU. And we're named after the city that we're located in. So we're located in the city of Youngstown, Ohio. That is a smaller city with around 65,000 people. And we're located right in the heart of that city. And a fun fact about YSU is that we are one of the most affordable state universities in the United States. And the city of Youngstown has one of the most affordable costs of living. So that means living here is very affordable compared to other areas in the United States. And here are some pictures of our wonderful international students and some views downtown in the city and around campus as well. So next I'll share about our entry requirements. So we have an undergraduate program and the minimum GPA is a 2.0 GPA on a 4.0 scale. We do require the English language proficiency test. We accept the TOEFL, IELTS, Duolingo English test, and the Pearson test of English. So you can see here for TOEFL, our minimum test score is 67. For IELTS, our minimum composite score is a 6.0 with at least a 5.0 on each subscale. And for the Duolingo English test, our minimum test score is a 95. We do not require any essays in this application. We do not require SAT or ACT scores, and we do not require any references or letters of recommendation. Now, for graduate programs, we have a little different requirements. So for graduate students, they're required to have a 2.7 GPA on a 4.0 scale, and the English language requirements are a little bit higher. As far as other requirements, some of our graduate programs do require the GRE or GMAT. Some may require you to submit a resume or letter of recommendation. So if you're interested, I'll share my contact information later and I can help answer your questions about those specific entry requirements. And fun fact, this picture here is a little penguin, and that's Pete the penguin. He's our university mascot. You'll see pictures of him all around campus. As far as our application fees and deadline, so our deadlines are coming up, but they are still open for the fall 22 semester. So for undergraduate students, the fall 22 application deadline is June 1st. For graduate students for fall 22 semester, the application deadline is April 15th, 2022. So there's still plenty of time to apply. And our undergraduate application fee is $45 US. We also have an English as a second language program here. So if you're interested in just studying English at YSU, you definitely can do that. And that application fee is $45 US. Our graduate application fee is $90 US. It's a little bit higher for graduate programs, which is common in the United States. And so you can normally pay these online with a credit card or by wire bank transfer. So that's something important to ask the university as well. How can you pay those application fees? And here is our tuition and living costs for this year of 2022. And you can see first, in the first box, we have our undergraduate tuition. So our average tuition and fees is $10,530 for the academic year. So for 1 year, you can expect to pay that around $10,000 for tuition and fees. Then we have estimated costs for room and board. That's your housing, your eating expenses, and you can choose to live on campus or off campus. There's many different options at YSU. We also have an estimate for books and supplies. Those are the books that could be required for your course. And we also have a health insurance program that we enroll all international students in so that they can receive medical care when they're in the United States. So the total estimated expenses, all of those expenses combined for 1 year, is around $22,324 US for the year. And graduate programs has very similar tuition living costs. You'll see that it's even a little bit lower in the tuition costs. So it's very similar, but actually a little bit lower. And keep in mind, this is tuition costs before scholarships. So we have many scholarships available for undergraduate students and graduate students. Here, I'll focus on undergraduate scholarships for freshman students. So you do not have to submit a separate scholarship application. You just have to submit your high school transcript and diploma, and we'll calculate your GPA. And if you meet these requirements, then we'll automatically award a scholarship and let you know what scholarship you've received in your admission letter. So if you have a 3.0 to 3.39 GPA, you'll be awarded the $1,000 award. If you have a 3.4 to 3.69, you'll be awarded the $2,500 award. And if you have above a 3.7 to 4.0, you'll receive the $4,000 award. And on top of that, if you are first in your class, documented to be the #1 highest ranking student in your class, we'll award you a $5,000 scholarship. So all of these scholarships are renewable. So you can get them up to 4 years if you're studying a bachelor degree, as long as you maintain a 3.0 GPA while you're studying here. In addition, we have an honors college program at YSU, and they require that you have a 3.5 GPA or higher to apply. Previously, they did require the ACT or SAT test for admission. However, right now, during this time of the pandemic, they have waived that requirement. So you only have to submit your transcripts to have a 3.5 GPA or higher. And then if you're accepted to the honors college, they'll award you an additional $1,000 tuition scholarship for up to 4 years. So it's renewable. And they'll award a $2,000 housing scholarship you can get for 2 years for a total of $4,000. So there's wonderful scholarship opportunities for you to really bring down that cost of tuition. We also have great graduate student scholarships as well as assistantships available. So if you're interested, I definitely encourage you to apply online on our website at www.ysu.edu/IFS. And you're welcome to contact us anytime with questions at intadm@ysu.edu. So that brings me to the end of my presentation today. Thank you so much for watching. And at this time, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have about test scores or scholarships or studying in the United States in general. So thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.
That was great, Erica. Thank you so much. That was so much information on that presentation. It was really great. And I love that. And when you started going into the YSU student pictures, I saw a little student with a little Brazilian flag. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. We do have a few students from Brazil right now.
Hopefully you will have more in the future.
Yeah.
So I was checking the chat and we have one question here that says, what if I'm a US citizen applying to college as a domestic student, but I did my schooling in a foreign country in a foreign language? Do I need to take an English proficiency test? That is a good question.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I would say it depends on where you're studying and where you're applying to. So for our university, if you're a US citizen, we do not require an English proficiency test. no matter where you've studied or what language you studied in. If you're a US citizen, you do not have to.
Awesome.
It could depend on specifically what university you're interested in.
Yeah, that's great. That's good to know. We have another one here. As far as English proficiency exams go, many students ask if a grade slightly lower than the required score can be accepted. For example, the required TOEFL IBT is 100 and the student sends in a TOEFL IBT 96.
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you have students who their test scores are really close to that minimum requirement, it's good to ask the university if they should still apply. Oftentimes they'll say, yes, you can apply, because sometimes they can have some flexibility with the student and offer conditional admission, meaning they would be admitted, but would have to pass their classes and pass an English test at the university before. Also, if the student's English score is a little bit lower, the university may recommend that they first study ESL, first study English at the university to get their English up to a higher level so that they can study and be successful in that undergraduate or graduate studies.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great questions. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here and answering everything. I'm trying to think of other questions that we get from students in person. One of the things we were actually sort of talking about this before we started was students that don't have, so YSU is test optional. And let's say a student, he is really into engineering or, you know, more math oriented, and has always done great in math and that kind of stuff in school, and really wants to take the SAT, and then takes the SAT and has a very, not below average, but sort of in the middle grade. And sometimes they get very confused about, should I send it? Because at least that shows that I did it and that I really want it and that I'm trying, and or my grade isn't that great, so me sending it will just maybe not help me at all.
Right. And that's a great question. And in these situations, it really depends. And ultimately, the choice is up to you. So for YSU, we don't require SAT for undergrad admission. So if, let's say, you have amazing grades, but you take an SAT and you score really low on it, you don't have to send it. You're not obligated to send it. And in that case, we don't require it. We won't look at it. So it's probably best that you don't even send it. However, our honors college, it is optional to send the SAT. Before COVID, they did require it and did look at it. So it depends. If your SAT is high enough and meets the honors college requirements, then I'd say, yeah, definitely submit it. Because those, you know, the universities will like to see it if it is optional. But if it's not required at all, then generally you probably shouldn't submit it, because it's not going to help you in that case.
Understood. That makes a lot of sense. I think if we don't have any more questions in the chat, I think that was a very comprehensive presentation. So there are very few doubts left. I just wanted to say thank you again so much for being here with us today. This recording will be available on our YouTube channel soon. And it was a pleasure having you and talking to you today, Erica, and hopefully we can do this in person someday in the near future.
Yes, yeah, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much to EducationUSA for hosting us, and thank you to the students who are participating today and who will be watching in the future. And I just want to say we wish you the best of luck in your future studies, and thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.